Greetings, Ms. Leah. Today I'll be doing my presentation on Anne Frank's diary, also known as Anne Frank's diary, Diary of a Young Girl. I am Manuth from grade 8. Anne Frank's diary was published on June 25th, 1947. It became a household name in almost coming-of-age books, as it talks about Anne Frank developing as a person. The story started by Anne Frank and her family going to hiding to escape German prosecution in World War II. Main character. Anne Frank is a witty and smart character who slowly develops over time to become a more detailed, more in-depth character. She is a dynamic character. This is due to the fact that she slowly changes throughout the story, becoming a more mature, caring, and independent young adult. She wants to change the world. She wants to become the voice that all the girls need. She wants to become a writer, a journalist. As she puts it, she doesn't want to become another housewife. The picture on the right is Anne Frank writing the diary. Okay, time for the setting. The time was 1942. Germany had just occupied the Netherlands. However, at the beginning, Germany had not began to prosecute the Jews. However, they started small. First, they put a Jewish star, the Star of David, on every single Jew. So they started identifying them, started knowing who was a Jew. After that, they limited their transportation, not allowing them to drive cars or even bicycles, only their 2 feet, only allowing them to walk. This limited their transportation if they wanted to escape the Netherlands, or back then it was known as Holland. She lived in Amsterdam with her family in an apartment they rented. However, in 1942, the German prosecution went so severe that she ended up going to hiding in a secret annex in her father's work building. Okay, so now for the main plot. At the start of the story, Anne Frank starts talking about her life at school and her day-to-day life. However, this quickly changes because her sister Margaret got a call-up notice from the Gestapo, which basically means she's gonna get sent to a concentration camp. This forces the Frank family to go into hiding early, 3 days. And then she slowly starts to write about her day-to-day life. The Van Pels family moves in with them in the secret annex, and Anne Frank begins to get close to their son Peter. She slowly develops a romantic relationship with Peter. However, at the end of the diary, she begins to criticize herself, talking about how she has a good and a bad side, and then how she only shows her bad side because every time she tries to show her good side, she immediately gets shut down and discouraged. And she talks about how if she was the only person on the planet, maybe then she could become a good person. This is her last diary entry. 3 days later, her family got raided by the Gestapo. Every single person that was hiding in the annex, being the Frank family, the Van Pels family, and Mr. Fritz Kiefer, I believe, he is a Jewish dentist, all got arrested and sent to a concentration camp. Anne Frank was actually on the last trains to Auschwitz when the Americans had already liberated Holland. However, she, her sister, her mother, and all the Van Pels family all died. Anne Frank died of, I believe, it was a disease caused by poor hygiene conditions. However, the most depressing part about it is that if she had lived just 15 more days, the Americans would have already liberated her concentration camp, allowing her to survive. Both her sister and her could have survived. Theme. So the first theme I found out when I was reading the book was coming of age. You can see in the book how Anne Frank slowly becomes an independent woman. It starts from the point where she goes into hiding in the beginning, where she takes charge. She begins to help her family get orderly in the new secret annex as she slowly matures throughout the story. The second theme is Anne Frank second theme is good versus evil. Good versus evil is a very strong theme in this book, as you really get to know what's good and what's evil. This book started at the same time when the Allies were fighting against the Axis, and they were hiding from the Axis, who were definitely evil. They were completely evil, persecuting the Jews. When reading Anne Frank's diary, I found a sense of almost erratic behavior, but that's what makes it beautiful, because it's purely human to be erratic at that age, and then the lows and the highs of living in an annex. And another feeling that I felt while reading it is hope. She talks very positively sometimes. She talks about her dream, her ambitions, what she's gonna do when this war is all over. It gives you a sense of hope as the Allies had began squeezing the Axis out of Europe during this time. Okay, so on to symbol. The first symbol is the Star of David. That's what the German officers used to mark the Jewish people. However, it became a symbol of resistance, of perseverance. And then, second, the diary. The diary of Anne Frank. Her diary was what she turned to when she needed something to confide in. As she used to say, paper has more patience than people. The Nazi swastika is a symbol of pure, almost evil. It is what's shown to be completely and utterly evil. The swastika is used as a fear mechanism to round up all the Jews and send them to concentration camps. My opinion, I found this book extremely helpful as it allowed me to relate to her problems. It allowed me to think differently of the world. How lucky I have it. And it truly made me sad to know what actually happened to them. I would rate this book a 10 out of 10. One of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. Okay, so I was able to link Anne Frank's struggle to return to my own struggles, to be more independent, to be more, let's say, adult-like. If I were to link it to the modern world, I would be disappointed that the world has come to such woes as wars are going on again, even though we should have learned from World War II, the greatest catastrophe of the last century. Okay, thank you. That is my presentation. Thank you, Ms. Leah.